Good morning, guys. Hey, Shay. Hey, Skylar. Justin. Just to start us off here, we've got some more people that are going to be adding in, hopefully. I've heard from a lot of people they're having some internet issues, so interfering with assignments and attendance and all kinds of things. So if you're having any problems getting your assignments in on time, please let me know. I think I heard from 4 students from Tuesday that were having internet problems. So, and I think I myself was talking that I had an unstable connection, which I never lost it, but who knows as we go along. Thanks for putting your pictures up, guys, when you can. Does anyone have any questions about assignments? I'm not sure when Brightspace came up. I think somebody wrote me right before they went to bed on Tuesday and it still wasn't up. So I noticed it was up yesterday. So today we're going to be talking about change management. To me, in organizations today, change management is one of the problems that organizations face. As conditions change internally, externally. I mean, this is a huge change project we're going through right now, just trying to have the classes online. Are classes going pretty well for everyone? I'd like to hear from some of you. What's your thoughts? Anybody?
Classes are going okay. It's a little bit different than what we're used to, so I guess it's just a little bit of an adjustment and getting used to a new schedule.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely understand that. Are most people using Zoom, or is it rather Teams, or what are people using? Other instructors?
This is my only Zoom class.
What was that?
This is my only Zoom class.
Oh, okay.
And for as far as online classes, I think some classes are easier to transition to than others a bit. Of course, I have a journalism class that kind of requires me to be in the Mac lab and doing some hands-on different designing stuff that we're kind of going through just like a pause basically right now and just kind of working on book readings.
Okay. Everybody see Scott's Scott's answer there? I don't think I got it all, Scott. Let me go back to it. Oh, other classes use narrated PowerPoints. Okay. For me, I think these classes are going well. I hope you're feeling the same way. I've heard from a few of you that have thinking that it's going okay. I'd rather have the interaction back and forth rather than just narrate a PowerPoint. So well, we got 10 of the 15 of you, so I think we'll go ahead and get started, guys. About 4 minutes after. Oh, there we got Emily. Good deal. Oh, she came on. Oh, there she is. On Sappy's on. Good, good. Okay, we're only missing 3 people, and hopefully they will join us as we can. I know David was having some problems, and his internet was really weak, and somebody came to work on it, and it still didn't work well. So we'll go from there. So we're really only missing a couple people. So, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share you. I've got a couple. Change management is one of my, I would say that my master's degree was largely about change management. And as we talk here, I'm going to ask that you guys think about a change that you would like to implement, and go from there to try and figure out how what you're learning today can help you. And again, to me, in organizations today, change management is one of the biggest barriers to moving forward with your organization. Okay. All right. So you guys can see the screen, correct? The delta sign. If you haven't heard this before, the delta sign stands for change in your lives. So I'm going to go on over here, and we'll move on through these slides. I love opening up conversations with people that really haven't dealt much with change, or have to try to manage change. And again, what I'm trying to do is teach you to be a champion of change. I know when, and I don't think I have that slide here, but I've seen a slide before that back in 400 AD or something like that, Heraclitus, a scholar, said that the only thing about change, the only thing that's not going to change is the rate of change. And I know, speaking with friends of mine that are in organizations, so for example, organizations right now are kind of in chaos because people have had to try to start to work from home. Restaurants have had to try to figure out how they're going to deliver valued meals and keep themselves afloat. So there's so much change going on now. It's just pretty chaotic. So I think this is pretty timely. But again, there's change internally inside the organizations, and there's change outside the organizations beyond our control. And that's what we're living with right now. Okay. So anyway, I want to give you some tips on being a champion of change. Okay. So let's move on through here. So when we're talking about management in general, that we're talking about theory X and Y. And I think we talked about this just briefly in class. Does anybody remember from your management classes? Maybe you haven't had management classes yet. That's a real possibility with the level that we're talking at. So can anybody remember what theory X and theory Y management styles are all about? Nobody remembers? And that's okay. That's okay. And again, you may not have even had it yet. So theory X and theory Y, again, I've taught management for several years. So when I'm teaching this to students, theory X, I put a stick figure on the board and cross out the stick figure, okay? And that is what a theory X manager, that's the attitude they have about people. And that is that you can't trust them. You have to watch them. You have to micromanage them. If you've got to watch, you can't trust them. And again, this is the manager's mindset. That doesn't mean that you're a bad employee if you are inside and working for a Theory X manager. No matter what you do, they're not going to trust you. Okay. So again, that theory and Theory Y, that's a transformational leader. They want you to do well. They want you to develop. They want they're your champion. Where the other way around, Theory X is you'd never want to be underneath a Theory X manager. You know, have them as your supervisor. And again, it's less common today. Let's say that let's go back to management. Let's go back to management in the like the 50s when people were coming back from the war. So when people came back from the war, the men that came back from the war, there was a glut in labor that was available, and a lot of it was factory work. You know, the ladies took over, the women took over of the nation when the men were at war, but the women could go back home. But again, the mentality then was that you are a warm body in a machine. Okay, so you're a cog in this machine, and if you don't want to do what we tell you to do, then I can find another warm body to take your place. So it's kind of a machine mentality, not really looking at the value of the human being. And anyway, as this went on, there are different continuum of management styles, but that was known as command and control. Is you're going to do what I'm telling you to do. If in today's environment, my dissertation, and I think most organizations are attempting to use their employees' ideas for improvement. Back then, if you would have offered your advice on improving something within the factory, they would have said, "Who asked you?" You know, it would not have any regard. Where now we're trying to, I guess my mantra is, you've hired great employees, now listen to their ideas, because they have good ideas. They're the first ones on the front line of the production line. They're the first ones working with the customers and sales. You know, listen to your people's ideas. They're the ones that have the good ideas. So again, it's gone from the Likert continuum of management styles. That was everywhere from being authoritative to being letting them being participative in leadership and management. Blake and Mouton, all of these have different factors of them. So kind of a history of management practices. And today, again, it's the organization really valuing their employees and listening to their ideas and realizing the value of their employees, okay? So again, when you're talking about change, what is the level of change you're talking about? Is it at the individual level, which is the lowest level? Does an individual, is their job changing? Is their behavior need to change? Is their role changing? You know, is it the individual? Is it your team? Is your team going to be working on a new project? That's what the change is. Is it just one location of a big organization that would be a group, more of a group thing? Or is it even a subsidiary of a conglomerate? You know, is that the group? But then again, organizational change is way at the high level. Organization change is really tough. So when I was a process improvement person at Rockwell Collins, people would come to me and they would ask, I would ask them, what level is the change at? And I'm getting a crazy call here, so let me shut it off. I had it turned down anyway. Okay, so my first question was, you know, which level are you at? Are you at something under your control, or is it that you have concern, or is it in your area of control? So that's one thing. When you're talking about what kind of change you want to work on, make sure there's two circles. The inner circle is your circle of control, and the outer circle is your circle of concern. So making sure you're in the circle of control. This is something you can control and change. So for example, you can change your own behavior. You maybe cannot control somebody else's behavior. But again, try to think about it in that way. So at what level is your change effort? And the lower the level, the better, is more success you're going to have, okay? So let's go on to what's the need for change? And again, this is internally. So let's think about, hey, Lena, how you doing? So let's think about, let's think about, we're talking about change today. Let's think about the forces in the internal environment. So it may be a new team member, it may be a new leader. You may be switched to a new team. You may have a new location. You may have, well, there's just all kinds of changes internally. Okay, but it's mostly how you're working together. Whenever has anybody ever moved to a new location from an old location? Nobody's done that. It's so wonderful to move from an old building to a new building. That's a great change in an internal environment. So that's something that's easier to get along with. So then again, forces in the external environment. That's things that is going on right now with this coronavirus thing. That it's in the external environment. We have to adjust to it. So in an organization, it could be your customers' needs are changing. It could be your competitors are changing. It could be the global environment is changing. Let's think about gas prices right now. Gas prices are just way low because there's a glut of oil. So again, things happen that you've got to change your plan as a person and as an organization. Okay. So think about that when you're talking about internal environment, inside where you're at, and then the external that you're being impacted by. Okay. So this is John Cotter's 7 steps to change management. And if you over the years, I'm sure you've heard of, this is the father of, for example, Michael Porter. In your education here in business, you're going to find out that Michael Porter is the strategy guru. He's the father of strategy. Well, John Cotter is the father of change management. So from his books that he has, and again, people in your workplace are going to know John Cotter's name if they've been through college at all, college and university. So we're going to talk about the very first 4 steps of this. And the first step is where the other ones, 5, 6, and 7 are very important too, but these first 4 are critical. So we'll talk about this first one. So establishing a sense of urgency. What exactly does that mean? Well, that means what if you're standing on a burning platform, what do you need to do?
Get off.
Absolutely. You better jump. You better jump. And it's so interesting. In the second half of our time together today, we're going to go into the creator that talked about the burning platform. He's a change management guru that I'm familiar with. And again, if you can convince people that there's a burning platform, they will jump. Okay? Why do we have to change? Why do we have to change for example, our strategy as an organization? Why do you have to change the way you eat? Are you suffering? Are you if you don't change, you're going to have a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? So a burning platform. And again, my question is a burning platform the best scenario? I'm not saying it is, but lots of times it'll get people to move. So you always got to think about what will happen if we don't make this change. Okay, so that's one of your primary arguments for getting people to change. All right. And again, I've heard that if the platform isn't burning, set it on fire. So again, I'm not saying, what I want to say. I'm not suggesting that you set things on fire. I'm suggesting that, keep that in mind. And as we're talking today, I'd like you to think about a change you would like to see happen in your life, in your job, in your relations with your family. Again, all of this change is everywhere. Change is everywhere. Okay. So again, establish, because the first thing people ask is when you're proposing a change is why? Why do we need to change? Why do we need to change? That's the biggest thing. And you've got to have a good argument for them. You've got to have a good argument for them. Okay, so here is what we're talking about. It says the second point of John Cotter's 8 points, 7 points, however many there were, is to get the support of your leaders and your peers. Okay, so if you can get them to sponsor the change with you, that's going to be very valuable. Okay, so what I have found, I've studied power and persuasion in the past, and persuasion, the strongest type of persuasion is rational persuasion. And so why it is so powerful, I mean, it goes from I can't think of what the least, I think the least amount of trying to persuade is just let them to have their own decision made. The other one is to coerce them through coercion. And what that means is, if you don't do this, this will happen. If you don't change your behavior, you're going to be fired. If you don't, it's something, um, if you don't get an assignment in time, you're going to flunk the whole course. Okay, so that's coercion, rather than trying to get people to understand. And so the rational persuasion is the most impactful and the most valuable, and that's because it's based on logic. Why do they need to change this in this way? Why does the organization need to change in this way? And why it is so powerful is because it works with every level of people. It works with your people above you. If you can prove your case, it works with people at your level. It works with people, your subordinates below you. It works with everyone. So if you have the logic, that is a big coup in your persuasion of a change that needs to be made. And so we're talking about WIFM. How many people, who knows what WIFM is? Okay, it's an acronym. It's what's in it for me. So again, I've in every class I teach, I talk about how important it is to know your employees, to know the people that you're leading, to know your coworkers. And so how are you going to know what's in it for them if you don't know them? So again, leaders, managers, really coworkers, it's important to know each other, to know and actually care for each other. Okay, so again, I love this graphic that's on this slide. I love the hands holding around an idea. They're embracing the idea, and together they're going to make it happen. So that's just powerful. So to me, your leader and peer sponsorship, trying to get them to join with you. Okay, so the next one is, this is where we get into the elevator speech. So let's talk about, let's say that you're in a team of 6, and you and someone else are champions of the change. You'd like to see this happen. Okay, so you have to have a passion to lead the change, and you have had experience of what an elevator speech is. You need an elevator speech to support this change. So why is that important, that you and your other change champion have the same elevator speech? It's just critical, because when you meet somebody and if you talk to them about the change, you're saying the same thing. What happens so often in communication is that people will hear messages separately from other people. And you know the telephone game where things change because people change, put a little bit of flair on it, put a little bit of other detail in it, and it means something differently. This elevator speech needs to be known by both change champions, so you're talking with the same voice, okay, and the message is clear. So again, what do you see as, why do we need this? What is the vision that you see? Okay, so a vision of the change. Okay, the next one is empower others to implement change. So if let's talk about empowerment here. I think we've talked about this in class, but I talk about it all the time, so I'm not sure if I've mentioned it in class or not. But empowerment, what exactly does that mean? Let's talk about that for a minute. I'm kind of losing my voice, so anybody can chime in here, please. What does empowerment mean? Be brave.
To like give somebody else confidence to do something.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're giving them permission to do something, right? Okay, but in the realm of real life, whose hands is it in whether they're going to be empowered or not? It's the person themselves, right? But there's no magic wand. If I went around and empowered you, with a magic wand, every one of you on your heads, and empowered you, does that mean you're going to feel empowered? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Some of it has to do with trust. If you have been empowered before and made a decision and then got your hand slapped, you're not going to stick your neck out again. Using some cliches here, but you understand what I'm saying. If you've been burnt before, I'm not reaching out. I'm not gonna. Let's say that if I'm trying to get the class to respond and somebody does respond, then I laugh at them or make fun of them or what I want to say, break them down. You're not going to respond, and hopefully you haven't felt that that's the way I've responded to what you guys have been saying. But again, trying to get your fellow employees, trying to get your leaders, trying to get stakeholders in to buy into your change is critical. So let's talk about stakeholders for just a moment. How would you define stakeholders to a little brother or sister? Is a stakeholder a stockholder? No. Okay, got that. So what is a stakeholder? What's the key term in the stakeholder description? Okay, stakeholders are people that have a stake in what is going to happen. Okay, so who are the stakeholders of this class? Let me hear from you. It's me. Who else? You, correct? Who else? Everybody open up your mics. Let's talk. Come on.
Maybe like our future employers who are going to be affected by whether we've learned what we were supposed to or not.
Yes, who was that?
Shay.
Shay, thank you, Shay. I didn't notice whose box lit up. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. It's the university itself. It's your parents. They're investing money in this education, right? So stakeholders, they have a stake in the success of whatever we're talking about. Okay, so it's important to know who your stakeholders are because you need to reach them and you need to get them on board. Okay, so let's talk about, we've got about 8.5 minutes here before we go on to the next session. So let's talk about, why do people resist change? And I'm going to count on you guys talking about this. What are the reasons?
A lot of times it's just scary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uncomfortable. What else?
There could be risk associated with it.
Absolutely.
Whether it could be financial or other sorts of risk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fear of the unknown.
Good, guys. You're getting a lot of them. Anybody else? Thanks for contributing. It's much better than me just talking to myself, okay? So these are the 12, 10, it looks like there's about 9 reasons. So Emily shared that it's scary. How much of these have to do with fear? Then Claire talked about economically. That economic threat is there, correct? So think about this. How many of these are very personal? So your position is threatened. Maybe you're not going to be able to make decisions like you could make before. Lack of information. When you don't know what's going on, that is scary. Because what happens when you don't know what's going on? What happens in an organization when you don't know what's going on?
A lot of miscommunication and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And people make up things. People, I think it's this, I think it's that, I think it's this. And it's usually the worst case scenario that there could possibly be. So if you don't tell them what's going on, they're going to be making up things far worse than what is going on. And again, there's times that you can't tell them everything. And that's okay that you can't tell them everything. Tell them what you can. Be transparent, be open. Okay? So again, one of the greatest stories I've got is when I was out in school out at Utah, we had a consultant come and present to us. And I don't know if it was my change management class or what class it was, I don't remember. But he was talking about a small manufacturing firm in southern Iowa. It was either at Coin or can't think of what the other little, Corridon maybe. Anyways, a small manufacturing entity. And the story he told, and this was in the middle 90s, guys. This was 25 years ago. And what he was talking to them about teams. And no longer were they going to be supervisors, foremen, bosses. They were going to be team leads. And they were just, you know, and now we know what team leads are. We know we work in teams and organizations. We've grown into it. Sometimes we still don't do very well with it, but we're growing, you know, we're growing into it. And what he said is he raised his hand and he says, what do I tell my mom? Because his identity was wrapped up in being a supervisor, a foreman, a boss, a leader, and not necessarily a team leader. So, you know, look at these reasons. Again, it was impacting everything that was going on there. Okay, another part of this is my husband's about 4 minutes left. We're doing fine, almost 5. Another story to tell you is my husband worked at a telephone company, small rural telephone company. And this had to be again, 25, 30 years ago. They were switching from a paper bookkeeping system to electronics. And it probably was about 25 years ago, but probably about the same timeline. And these two women were in their 50s, very knowledgeable women. They'd been there forever. They were scared to death. And so one of them went home every day crying because she was so upset. Can you imagine how that upset the rest of her family? Anyway, all of that was caused by the lack of information. If the leader would have said, we're here to support you. We're not going to let, you know, we don't know how smoothly this is going to go, but we're here to support you. We'll face this together. Those women did not get that. My husband said it's just like they've become stupid overnight, and they're not stupid. So it was just that they were scared. They didn't know what was going on. You know, they didn't know how things would turn out. Am I going to lose my job? You know, that's a possibility always. So anyway, something to keep thinking about. Okay, we got about 3 minutes here before we move on to the next section. And again, the importance of open communication is giving people the power. You know, talk to them about what we're expecting, what we're going to go through, what to expect. That's really, really powerful. Okay, so another way of looking at this is what is the current state? And so a way of looking at change is looking at what is the current state, what's currently happening now, what is the ideal state of what's happening now, and what is the future state? How close can we get to that? So how can we get to the ideal state? So when you're talking about that there's something going on, you know, what is happening? And again, you need to define what's happening now. That's going to help you sell that we need to change. All right. So when you're looking at, to me, I love these states. These states, they're just priceless. And let me give you an example. We were working on the federal tax process at Rockwell. It was one of my projects that I worked on. I worked with over 50 teams. That was one of them. And the leader of the team came to me and he said, So what had happened is Rockwell Collins Incorporated had spun off of the parent company that was Rockwell Collins. And before we had had Deloitte and Touche do all of our accounting for the federal tax. So they were consultants, a consulting company. We didn't have really the buy-in that we needed to have now that we were our own entity. So they created a federal tax team. And that federal tax team was asking a lot of questions. And this is where the process of how they were collecting the data was painful. And so when I talked to him, I think I'll be able to explain this and we'll go on to the next session. When we talked about it, the leader said, Deb, we don't really need to go into what's currently happening now. And I said, Mark, if we don't go into what's currently happening now, we don't know what needs to change. And so you need to look at what is happening right now and figuring out what needs to change for us to move into the future. And so we did map out the process. And what was happening is they were the 200 people in the finance group at Rockwell were so used to D&T just feeding them the data and D&T taking care of it. D&T didn't have the interest in the organization that the new federal tax team did. And they were asking more questions. That made the people uncomfortable. Okay, so that's why it had to be figured out and explained to them that we need to look at things now because we're our own organization. Okay, so we'll go on to the next session here. I'm sure we'll run out of time because we're under a minute. So I'll see you in the next session. Thanks, guys.